Have you ever come across some really stubborn chromatic aberration that you just can't get rid of whatever method you try? This unsightly magenta and green fringing can kind of ruin the look of photos, and if you don't know how to get rid of it, it can be a real issue when you want to print your work large. In this video, I'm going to give you a few extra little tools to deal with it in both Lightroom and Photoshop. Let's go find out what they are. Hi, I'm Charlotte Rees from Unleash Education, and you've tuned into another editing toolbox video where we share a quick tip, trick, or technique to help make your pet photography editing life easier. So this video actually continues on from a video that Craig did a while back called How to Identify and Remove Chromatic Aberration. This video is going to go a step further by showing you a couple of extra little tips and tricks that you can use if you have really stubborn chromatic aberration. So first up, a little recap. What is chromatic aberration? It's otherwise known as fringing, and it will present in your images like this. So this is zoomed into 300%, so you can see it really easily. I wouldn't normally recommend zooming in this far on your images because your images are going to look really noisy and not sharp, but this is just for the purposes of seeing what we're doing. So the fringing that you see here is along the edges of highlights, and that's usually where it presents in an image. It also mostly happens with prime lenses that are capable of very shallow depths of field. You'll see this lens was the 35mm f1.4 lens, and this was taken at f1.8, so a pretty shallow depth of field. And you'll get it along the edges of highlights, or the boundary between highlights and shadows. Areas of contrast where there's lines tends to get this kind of look. So the green fringing I've found seems to present behind the plane of focus, and the purple or red fringing you get in front of the plane of focus. So that's why you sometimes get two different colors in the same image. So here we've got purple along the edge of the nose, and then green along the back of the head here and around the ears, and a little bit of purple there as well. So as you'll see in Craig's video, your first point of call is always to go into lens corrections and tick remove chromatic aberration. I find that does help with very minor chromatic aberration, but for pretty serious chromatic aberration like this, it doesn't tend to do a lot. So you'll need to go into manual. So the quickest way to get rid of it here is generally to grab this little eyedropper here. So click once to select the eyedropper, bring it over onto your image. It's asking you to pick a fringe color, and you'll see that as you go over the purple, your little eyedropper loads up with purple color. So when it loads up with the purple color, you know it's good to click. So you just need to click once, and you'll see it pretty magically disappears. Now over here under the defringe sliders, you'll see that this amount slider for purple has gone up quite a long way. There's also a purple hue slider under here with two little markers on it, and that can help you fine tune it. On this image, it's done a pretty good job already of this, so I'm not going to fiddle with that too much more. So let's try and get rid of this green. I've still got the eyedropper selected. I'm going to click on the green. As you'll see, the eyedropper loads up with green as you hover over it. I'm going to click once, and there we go. It's mostly vanished, but it's still kind of evident in a couple of little spots, and up here as well. So as you can see, it has moved the sliders here. Now if we click in an area where we can still see the green chromatic aberration, so let's click up here on the ear, it's actually moved those sliders a little bit. Now I've still got little bits of green up here. I've got a bit of a yellowy green color here. So if you see that this green fringing is a little bit stubborn, you can actually play around. I'll just click to put that back. You can actually play around with the green hue sliders. Now, I found that if you take the right hand little marker to the right, if you've got a really bluish kind of green, it tends to clean that up pretty well. See how that cleaned up just here? Just watch that area as I move that slider. See how that comes back? And then when I take that slider to the right, it cleans it up. So that's cleaned that up pretty nicely. So let's go down here where we've got more of a yellowish type of green. So if we take this other little marker into the yellow section to the left, see how that actually clears this up? Have a look in this area. So if I take it back there, the green comes back. If I take it this way, it gets rid of it. So by using this green hue slider here and moving these little markers, we've actually gotten rid of these last little bits of green chromatic aberration, which is awesome. Now I have noticed we've got a tiny little bit on the tip of the ear here that's still magenta. So let's see if we can move these purple hue sliders to try and get rid of that. Now, it kind of looks a little bit warm to me, so I'm going to take this right hand marker to the right. There we go. And that actually cleans that up really nicely. Now you'll notice here that I haven't changed the amount sliders at all. All I've been doing is adjusting the purple hue and the green hue to get rid of that. Now if we do a little before, if I just click on the little eye on the lens corrections panel here, you can see how bad that chromatic aberration was. It's really, really bad. If I let that go again, that's pretty good. But we didn't get that result just by using the eyedropper. We did have to fiddle with those purple hue and green hue sliders. So let's take a look at this next image that I've got ready here. So again, it was taken with a lens that is a prime lens that has a very shallow depth of field. It was shot at f1.2 and you can see it was a very high contrast scene. So there's really bright light coming from behind the subject. And sure enough, along the edges of the highlights, we've got some green fringing here. So I've already ticked remove chromatic aberration. It hasn't really done a lot here. So I'm going to go into manual, grab the eyedropper, hover over the green fringing, look for it to load up with green, the little eyedropper there. Click once and yeah, it's done an okay job. So as you can see, it's moved the amount and the green hue sliders here. It hasn't really gotten rid of that greenish sort of edge there. So I'm going to just move this slider into the warm zone a little bit more and see how that just kind of tidies up the last little bit of green there. So that definitely helps. Now it hasn't done the best job here, and this is mainly because that border between the highlight and the shadow where the chromatic aberration is out of focus. And generally if the area is out of focus, it makes it a bigger area and therefore it's a lot more stubborn to get rid of. However, this does make it a little bit easier to go into Photoshop and fix up. So I'm going to show you a little technique for tidying up the edges in Photoshop. Let's head over there now. Okay, here we are in Photoshop. So we've got this image of Benson here. And then we can see that along the edges here, specifically sort of along here, we've still got a bit of a greenish hue along there, and it's not overly attractive. It was a little bit stubborn to get rid of. So you can actually get rid of it manually. I found the easiest way is to grab the clone stamp tool, make the brush just big enough to kind of cover the edge here. So that's probably a good size. I'm going to set the blend mode of the clone stamp tool to color. And finally, I'm just going to go up and change the opacity to 100%. So to do this, I'm holding down Option to sample the color next to where the chromatic aberration is. And then I'm just going to run that along the edge here. And as you can see, it's sampling right next to it. Sometimes you might need to change where you sample from when you change your orientation a little bit. And as I'm running along here, it's actually going over the green. Nice and easy. Now, if you find the color looks a little bit too saturated, you can back the opacity off a little bit to maybe 70% or so. So let's try that on that side. Yep, that's doing a pretty good job. So you're basically just grabbing the color that it should be and then just putting the color over the top to mask the green. There we go. Much better. So you might be wondering, is there any point in doing this if you're only going to be seeing the image as small on screen? So say web resolution, sharing on social media, sharing via email. Probably not. You only really see the chromatic aberration unless it's really bad. You only really see it when you are seeing the image quite large. So if you are printing your work large on the wall, especially if you're printing on something like metallic or acrylic, you're really going to see this sort of stuff. It's going to be very obvious. So I would definitely recommend, if you are printing your work large, definitely deal with the chromatic aberration as best you can. If you're only going to be sharing on social media, you probably don't need to go into quite this level of detail to get rid of it. Anyway, hopefully that's been helpful. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments, and otherwise I'll catch you next time. Bye.